أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الصلاة والسلام على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So it is the 3rd of Muharram 1443, and the aim of our Majlis, or the aim of these talks for the next few days, is to be able to fall in love with the love of Hussein and his book through the love of Hussein. You know, you remember the words of Abis when he said, Hubbul Hussein ajunnani. The love of Hussein has made me crazy. And Imam Hussein said, and for you I shall be an example. So we're focusing on those words, on his words that he used when he wanted to request this last night of Ibadah, the night of Ashura. And he said, Ana uhibbu Salaa, I love Salah, wa tilawati kitabihi, and I love to recite his book, wa kathratu du'a, and lots of du'a wal istighfar, and I love to do istighfar, ask for forgiveness. So our topic has been, or is going to be, and has been for the last few days, the A to Z of Salah. A little bit about Muharram. You know, my first memories of Muharram are my father closing down. We had a chain of hardware shops. He would close them down, and there would be this preparation for the 10 days of Muharram. We would all go with him. We would go with him to the Imam Barka. We would scrub the floors. We would lay down the carpets. We would put the black banners up, and that's my memories. And I remember asking my dad, and the other thing we used to do is never used to go buy black clothes. The clothes we wore at home, what we call our normal clothes, they would be dyed black. And I still remember the big pots we had with water and the black dye, and our clothes would be put on there and then hung dry. And everybody else would have new clothes, and my father would say that if I died, would you go out to buy new clothes? And we'd just look at him. And I remember asking him, why all this? Just to be sad? And he would say, no, it's to be free. I didn't understand much then. My father died when I was 10, and he would say, it's to be free about being owned by no one, by being the best, what Allah ordained you to be. That is what being Husseini is all about, to wear your Husseini heart on your sleeve. So if you can't go to the mosque for whatever reason, I know things are open at the moment, but we're still a bit skeptical because this virus is still on a rampage. So maybe you'll create a Husseini corner at home, and maybe you would go in there with the same respect as you'd go with Imam Bara and have your majlises. That is really what Hussein is all about. But before we do that, let's recite the Quran, and we'll start with Surah Al-FAATIHA as we always do. Please recite with me. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. صدق الله العظيم. Close your eyes. Ask Allah to give the thawab to all the marhumeen, especially those for your family. Pray for those who are ill and those who are in trouble. We will now recite a surah of Quran, and today it's this beautiful surah. I absolutely adore this surah. You all know it. Recite it with me. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر صدق الله العلي العظيم وصدق الرسول الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين. We will now recite MARTHIYA, and this time again it's from the book Ya Hussein, and it's MARTHIYA number 8, which is on page 10. So please recite it with me. Can we start with the salawat? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. Let me tell you about Karbala, the events of ASHURA and Hussein ibn Ali. when they left Medina with all the family. Sughra did not know that never come back. Fatima Zahra, accept our sympathies for your family. There was Qasim, the son of Hassan. His body was trampled by the horse's hooves. Fatima Zahra, accept our sympathies for your young son. Then there was On and Muhammad. These sons of Zainab gave their lives for the cause of Islam. Fatima Zahra, accept our sympathies for your two young sons. There was Ali Akbar, the image of the Prophet. How could Hussein carry his martyred son? Fatima Zahra, accept our sympathies for Akbar. There was little Asghar, who was so thirsty. His thirst was quenched by an arrow. Fatima Zahra, accept our sympathies for the young babe. There was Abbas, the protector of Hussein's army. Both his arms cut, he couldn't bring water home. Fatima Zahra, accept our sympathies for the valiant Abbas. All of them died whilst Hussein was still there. Who will be there when Hussein is martyred? Fatima Zahra, accept our sympathies for Hussein. He gave his life whilst praising Allah. Even his last breath was in prostration. Fatima Zahra, accept our sympathies for the Savior of Islam. Can we have a salawat, please? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. So our topic, as I mentioned before, is the A to Z of Salah, and we're focusing on the words of Imam Hussein, and I continually repeat them so we actually know them really well. And the words of Imam Hussein were, when asking or requesting for a last night of focusing on Allah, on connecting with Allah, on the worship of Allah, he said, Ana uhibbu salah, I love Salah, wa tilawati kitabihi, and I love to recite his book. وكثرة الدعاء, I like to do lots of dua, والاستغفار, and ask for forgiveness. So we're looking at some random letters from here. Inshallah, in these 10 days we will finish all of them, but let's go over a recap of what we've already done, and then we'll look at the letters that we're going to focus on today. So we looked at A for acceptance and A for adhan, and if you remember, if salah is accepted, other deeds will be accepted. If it's rejected, other deeds will be rejected at all. And you know, when the adhan was recited, Imam Ali alayhi salam says that nothing would distract the Prophet. As soon as the time of salah came, it was as if he knew neither family nor friend. He would rush straight to be able to go to pray. We talked about W for water, where a sincere mu'min is so transparent and so clear, just like water. We talked about wudu as well, and wudu, to be in wudu throughout the day is an aspiration we should all hold on to. We talked about O as orientation of the Qibla, and remember what Imam Sadiq says: when you face the Qibla, empty the heart of whatever takes your attention away from Allah. Remember, you're standing before Him on the foot of His awesomeness, fear, and on the foot of hope. We looked at Niyya, and Niyya is intention, and we talked about how it is a soul's decision on performing an act after conceiving it, and then acknowledging its advantage and judging its necessity. The Prophet always said, the coolness of my eyes was placed in Salah and Psalms. Having that intention, this is what will take me to my full potential. This is where I will find my peace. So today, we're going to look at 4 letters. We're going to look at T. We're going to look at, and the T stands for both Takbeer and Tashahhud. We're going to look at Q, which stands for Qiyam and Qu'ood. We're going to look at R, which is Rukoo, and we're going to look at S, which is Sujood. So in other words, we're looking at all these different positions of Salah. They're set positions. We're supposed to be able to look at them and understand why they're there. And I'm going to start with Qiyam, okay? Qu'ood is to sit. I'm going to start with Qiyam. So we begin our Salah. So let's look at it on a sort of chronological sort of way. So we hear the adhan and we go to do wudu. Or maybe we do wudu before we hear the adhan. That doesn't matter. And then we walk towards our place of prayer. And we walk with this anticipation. I know I am now in the presence of my Creator. I'm always in His presence, but this is my special time with Him. I stand there and I cover myself. And when we cover ourselves with, if you're women, you will cover yourself with a chadar, and you'll put the clothes of prayer, as I say, over it. You're actually saying that we are covering ourselves in His generosity and forgiveness. Imagine you're wearing the clothes of God consciousness, of taqwa. We're enveloping ourselves in His mercy, in His rahmah. When we put that chadar on, it's Ya Sattar, Ya Ghaffar. It's recommended to wear white, to wear loose clothes, clean perfume. You wear an aqiq, you've combed your hair. So here you are standing, and now we're actually standing. We also talked about orientation, about facing the Qibla, and we're sort of facing the house of Allah. We're facing this direction where everybody globally is facing. So I'm getting all these vibes as well. So now I am in my Qiyam, and we're beginning with a standing position. And in this standing position, it is a reminder that we will all stand before Allah. On the Day of Judgment, we're all standing there as we are. We've got to abandon all our masks. In Qiyam, take off everything, no masks at all. Authenticity. It is you and you alone. It is me and me alone with my Rabb. No self-conceit, no selfishness, presenting ourselves as the authentic I. We're told, and the Prophet stood, he was completely still. Look what Imam Sadiq says. He says, my father said that when Imam Zain al-Abidin used to stand for Salah, he looked like a trunk of a tree, nothing of which would move unless the wind would move it. So he's standing there. And then we do Takbeer, right? Takbiratul Ihram. Now here Imam Khomeini is talking about the 4 takbeers of Adhan. I'm going to talk about Takbiratul Ihram. And in Takbiratul Ihram, as I mentioned, it is saying the meeting has begun. Allah is greater than everything and anyone. So just imagine all our bodily parts, all our energies are being called to this boardroom. Put your phones away, put everything away. You are just to focus on He who is managing the meeting, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So everything is gone. We know He's greater than everything and everyone. And we raise our hands. The Prophet used to raise his hands, right? And we raise our hands near our ears. So raising our hands. Oh, I got to tell you a story. We're told that the Prophet once went to the masjid to do Salah, and he took Imam Hussein with him. We're told that Imam Hussein didn't speak very quickly as a child. And the Prophet took him and he stood Imam Hussein near him on his right. And the Prophet said Takbeer, and suddenly Imam Hussein, who wasn't speaking, said Allahu Akbar. And the Prophet repeated the Takbeer 7 times, and Imam Hussein repeated it 7 times. And so it is mustahab to recite Takbeer 7 times. So you will say Allahu Akbar once loudly, like the Prophet did, and then 6 times softly Allahu Akbar. And that is the sunnah of the Prophet because of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Isn't that amazing? So Allahu Akbar, meeting has begun, no distractions, authentic us standing in front of him. And then the dua that Imam Zainul Abidin taught, which is Ya Muhsinu Kadataka al-Musi Fatajawazan Kabihi ma indi bi Jamili ma indaka ya Kareem. Or one who does ihsan. I can't, or the most awesome, the one who gives back, the one who gives you more than expected. Kadataka al-Musi. In front of you is the one, the sinner, totally engrossed in sin. Change for the jawaz and kabihi ma indi bi jamili ma indaka ya Kareem. Change what is horrible in me, what is bad in me, what is evil in me, with what is righteous and good in you. Now we will talk about qira'at, which is recitation of Quran, tomorrow. And remember, we're standing there reciting Quran. Can you imagine? So you and I, we're standing there, qira'at, we'll talk about it tomorrow, reciting Quran, and the awesomeness of that revelation. Because it is so awesome, it is the Quran, it just draws us into Rukoo, and it makes us go into Rukoo, right? Now, it is also the sins, if you remember I talked about it. If you imagine having your sins on your shoulders and your head, and you've gone into Rukoo, maybe those on your head might stay, but the ones on your shoulders have just dropped away. When the Prophet went into Rukoo, we are told that if you poured water on his back, it wouldn't move. So he went into Rukoo like that. Rukoo is politeness. Now imagine, when we're standing, our gaze reaches as far as the horizon, yes? When we go into Rukoo, we are reminded, because we look between our feet, and we're reminded that we only occupy that tiny little space on the earth. That's all we are. That's as far as our wealth, our influence, our ego, whatever. That's as far as it goes. And we actually acknowledge our vulnerability, our insignificance before Allah. The dhikr is from Surah Al-Waqiyah. Subhana Rabbi al-Azimi wa bihamdi. And when the Prophet was asked why, he said when he was taken to Mi'raj, and he's praying to Allah, recognizing his greatness, his body trembled. And in this awe, in this exhaustion of this awesomeness, he goes into Rukoo. You will notice runners, when they're finishing a race, when they've finished, and they're actually finished, in exhaustion, they hold their knees. So it's like we're exhausted. We want to go back to the Creator to be rejuvenated. And in exhaustion, we hold our knees. And it's a form of politeness as well. Look at what the Prophet says. No abd bows in Rukoo for Allah in a true way unless Allah adorns him with the light of his brilliance and shades him with his majesty and clothes him with the gown of his chosen ones. My goodness. We'd want to not move out of Rukoo when we read this hadith of the Prophet. And then we stand up again in Qiyam. This Qiyam after Rukoo is now standing as a different person. We're standing as his slave, and we say, Sami Allahu liman hamida. Allah hears he who praises and who is in gratitude of him. Because we're in so much in gratitude of the fact that he has adorned us with the light of his brilliance and shaded us with his majesty. That's just phenomenal, isn't it? Oh my goodness. And then the best part, the sujood. Sujood is proximity, is getting so close to him. You know what Imam Ali says? He said, if you knew the blessings that descended on you in sajda, you would not lift your head. It's a place of hajat. It's turning away from everything except Allah. Look what Imam Sadiq says, I swear by Allah, that the one who performs a sujood as it should be even for a single time in his life would not be a loser. You almost don't want to lift your head up from sajda. And to be able to say, Ya khayr al-mas'uleen, oh the best of those who can be asked of. Ya khayr al-mu'ateen, oh the best of those who is asked. Urzuqni, grant me sustenance, warzuq ayali, and grant sustenance to my family, min fadlika, from your extra, from your fadl, فَإِنَّكَ ذُو الْفَضْلِ الْعَظِيمِ, because you are just great in giving that extra, right? It's just amazing. Now, what did the Prophet do sajda on? He did sajda on this khamra mat made of branches of the date palm trees to pour water on the place where he did sajda. We do sajda on the earth, and that's the earth of Karbala if we can, because it reminds us. Immediately when we look at it, it reminds us of the mission of Imam Hussein, to fall in love with the Rabb of Hussein and his book, to be able to stand for freedom, to be able to oppose injustice, all that, just when we look at that, sajda of ours. And then when we go into sajda, we remember the sajda of Hussein. It is one of the most beautiful places to be. What we recite down there is heard right up into the heavens. And so sajda is something we should really, my goodness, you don't want to lift your head up at all. Just stay there. Don't move. And then tashahhud. Tashahhud, at the beginning of salah, can you imagine? We do adhan and iqama. So we prepare to enter a situation of belief, of iman, right? Now we've been through the salah where we've realized there is a state of realization. And the secret of sajda is total annihilation. So now when we come up, we're coming to another state of wakefulness in the world with tashahhud and salam. So we stand there. It's a different sort of tashahhud that there was in adhan. This one is one where we've understood. Look what Imam Khomeini says. Through the 4 takbeers, you announce the greatness of Allah to the dwellers of the visible and the invisible worlds, of the inward and outer kingdoms, right? Tashahhud is now looking at those 4 takbeers and actually acknowledging them, actually saying, oh my goodness, I acknowledge that. And so now we come to the salam. And the salam in essence is asking Allah for safety from satanic intrusions. Remember, it's the name of Allah, as-salam. It's his name for safety. And that's where we get the salam from. It's a phenomenal salah, all aspects of it, all those aspects, our Qiyam, our Qu'ood, our Rukoo, our Sujood, our Tashahhud, our Salam. These are all parts of the salah that literally we need to understand before we start them, before we do that. And when we finish the salah, look at what the Prophet used to do. The Prophet would recite 3 takbirat. So Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, raising his hands to his ears. And this is our sunnah that we do. And it's there, and it is prescribed by the Prophet to do 3 takbeers when you receive glad tidings. That's why we do takbeer on Eid. So we've got the glad tidings of Allah having connected to us in this salah. So inshallah we will look at some other letters and other parts of salah tomorrow. But today we will go to Karbala. And today we will look at the personality of Hur. My goodness, what a phenomenal man. You know, in Ziyat Waritha that we're taught by Imam Sadiq, we say, Bi abihi antum wa ummi. My mom and my dad be sacrificed for you. وَطَابَتِ الْأَرْضُ الَّتِي فِيهَا دُفِنْتُمْ. And the earth in which you're buried in has become pure. Hur is included in this. And he is one of those individuals who had a paradigm shift. And we look at him as an example to have a paradigm shift. Let's talk about what he did. It is through the leadership of Hur that he stops Imam going to Kufa. He diverts them to Karbala. He moved the camp. He was in the meeting where they moved the camp away from the river. He's the one who called for reinforcements. He was present in the meeting where they decided to stop water on the family of Imam Hussein on the 7th of Muharram. He's really agitated on the 9th of Muharram. So you can imagine, in the darkness, he's pacing up and down, and his soldiers who look upon him as their general, as their leader, say, Hur, are you nervous? And he would say, no. He said, I hear the children of Zahra, they're crying of thirst. Al-Atash, they're crying. in a dream, when his eyes closes briefly, he sees Sayyida and she says, Khair, what wrong did my son Hussein do to you? When he woke up, now the next morning, as he's walking out of his tent, he sees his soldiers cooling the legs of the horses by pouring water on them. But on the other hand, he can hear in the distance the crying of the children of Hussein. Al-Atash, Al-Atash. He had a paradigm shift. He changed. So he goes with his son and his slave. When he comes near the camp of Imam Hussein, he comes down off his horse and he tells his son to tie his hands with a handkerchief. And then on his knees, he crawls to Imam Hussein. You can imagine this scenario. And then he comes, Hazrat Abbas greets him and brings him to Imam Hussein. He refuses to stand. When he comes to the feet of Imam Hussein, he says, O son of Rahmatul Lil Alameen, O the son of the mercy to humankind, the greatest sinner in the world has come to you. Look at my Imam, look at your Imam, look at this phenomenal Imam. He says, Akhi Hur, my brother Hur, come. Abbas, my guest has come. He apologizes to her that he cannot offer him water. He places his head on Imam's feet. O son of Fatima, forgive me. And Imam says, Anta akhi fi dunya wal akhirah. You are my brother in the dunya and the akhirah. He makes his son go first on the battlefield to watch his son being martyred in the cause of truth. He fights a formidable battle, and he too is martyred. Now many years later, when Shah Abbas Safi wants to find out the greatness of a shaheed, he digs up the grave of Hur. He didn't have the courage to do anybody else. He digs up the grave of Hur and he sees a man lying there as though he's tired, as though he's just been put in the grave there and then. But he sees a handkerchief tied round his head. And he could smell this fragrance coming from this handkerchief. So he unties it and a voice says, leave that alone. This was tied to me by the son of Zahra. It is the handkerchief of Zahra. You will not touch that. He left it and he comes up. For you and me, the handkerchief on which we cry our tears on is just as important. Let us pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the tawfiq to be able to fall in love with the Rabb of Hussein and his book through the love of Hussein. So we too can say, Hubbul Hussein ajunnani. The love of Hussein has made me crazy. Rabbana taqabbal minna innaka antas samiul alim. We will now recite a NAWHA. Again, it's from the book. It's NAWHA number 7 and it's on page 9. I hear the cries of the children of Hussein. It rings in my ears. Al-Atash, Al-Atash, the thirst is killing us. Al-Atash, Al-Atash, the thirst is killing us. Al-Atash, Al-Atash, the children of Hussein. Weren't there any Muslims in the army of Yazid? Were there no fathers who had a human heart? On the burning sand, the children of Hussein cried out. On the burning sand, the children of Hussein cried out. Al-Atash, Al-Atash, the thirst is killing us. I hear the cries of the children of Hussein. It rings in my ears. Al-Atash, Al-Atash, the thirst is killing us. Al-Atash, Al-Atash, the thirst is killing us. Al-Atash, Al-Atash, the children of Hussein. Little Asghar lay so still in his cradle. His mother looked on, feeling helpless. Oh Furat, can't you spare some water for my son? Oh Furat, can't you spare some water for my son? Al-Atash, Al-Atash, the thirst is killing him. I hear the cries of the children of Hussein. It rings in my ears. Al-Atash, Al-Atash, the thirst is killing us. Al-Atash, Al-Atash, the thirst is killing us. Al-Atash, Al-Atash, the children of Hussein. Sakina looked to her uncle Abbas. He went to Furat to get some water. They cut off his arms, they pierced the water bag. They cut off his arms, they pierced the water bag. Al-Atash, Al-Atash, the thirst is killing us. I hear the cries of the children of Hussein. It rings in my ears. Al-Atash, Al-Atash, the thirst is killing us. Al-Atash, Al-Atash, the thirst is killing us. Al-Atash, Al-Atash, the children of Hussein. Have a salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajah. We will now stand for ziyarah. Please stand with me and let's recite ziyarah. Assalamu alayka ya Rasulallah. Assalamu alayka ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. Assalamu alayki ya Fatima al-Zahra, Sayyidat al-Nisa al-Alameen. Assalamu alayki ya Khadija al-Kubra. Assalamu alayka ya Hasan al-Mujtaba. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdillah wa ala al-arwah allati hallat bifinaik. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين وعلى 9 المعصومين من ذريتك علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة بن الحسن أجل الله فرجه وسهل الله مخرجه وظهوره. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائي في هذه الساعة وفي كل الساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتيه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Let us ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us a tawfiq to be able to fall in love with the Rabb of Hussein and his book through the love of Hussein. Inshallah, I'll see you tomorrow. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم.